Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. I'm currently participating in a Team Australia tournament, and the other day I finished this game in the tournament where my opponent and I had an absolutely epic game of the Ponziani-Steinitz Gambit, where I was winning to completely losing to completely winning again in a hard-fought match. Please enjoy. All right, so my Indonesian friend had the white pieces. Start off with an Italian, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. The Italian, I play the two knights defense with knight f6. They push their knight forward, knight g5, the beginning of the fried liver attack. Knight and bishop ganging up on my weak f-pawn. And of course, I now have the Ponziani-Steinitz Gambit. Knight captures pawn on e4. Often a mystifying sort of move for white if they've not seen it before. And very often what they'll do is they'll continue with the fried liver attack. So knight captures my pawn on f7, ostensibly forking these two pieces, except in this position, it's actually a bad move. Minus 0.6, so not devastatingly bad. But now I have queen to h4 with a mate in one threat. Very often, white will just freak out in this position. They did. Queen to f3. It's a blunder. It's a really bad blunder. How bad? Well, it just went from minus 0.6 to worse than minus 10. That's how bad it is, because I now have another knight forward, knight to d4, attacking the queen, attacking the pawn on that position. If the queen potentially moves, there may well be a mate in one threat. Very often I've played games where white simply resigns in this position. This, however, was a tournament game and white played on. Very interesting. So queen to the edge of the board, queen takes, king now forced to move. I thought I was just about to have mate, and then I realized it's not quite that simple. So these two knights in that position are very powerful because they control all of those four squares. So potentially queen here and queen here could be mate, except that both of those squares are defended at the moment. So at this point, I wasn't too sure what to actually do. I did find the best move eventually, which is d5. And that attacks the bishop, disconnects the bishop from the knight as well. And of course, if I whack that bishop, the bishop goes the wrong place, then potentially, mate. My opponent now plays queen to h5, a very provocative move. And here I was just spent quite a long time trying to work out what to do. So what I saw, of course, is that if the opponent moves their knight, it will be a discovered check. So I didn't really like that. And at the same time, I don't have a mate in one threat right away. Stockfish says that just taking the bishop is the best move. To just accept this is not as fast as this. However, I eventually played g6, which is the second best move. It's still pretty good. They give a check in that direction. I thought, yep, that should be okay. I can develop my bishop. That bishop is still disconnected. And it just so happens that everything here is actually defended. So that bishop is defended by that knight. This pawn is, of course, defended by the bishop. This knight is defended by the pawn. And this knight is defended by the queen. Absolutely amazing. Everything actually ends up being defended. My opponent now threatens my queen with the rook, which is, of course, defended by the bishop as well. And here I slip the queen out of the way. I was playing this game at this point on my phone. I think I was sitting on a train, so commuting back home. And I was actually starting to lose confidence. I was actually thinking, have I made a mistake somewhere here? Am I losing? So they take that knight, and that really had a blow to my confidence, actually. I thought I was losing. I was trying to think, what did I actually do wrong? And the thing is, I'm actually not losing here. I'm actually still completely winning. So I lashed out with a pawn, so to c5, and that was a massive blunder. It's subtle, it's not obviously a blunder, but it is a blunder. And look at this change in evaluation. from almost minus 22 to worse than plus 6. Absolutely extraordinary. And the reason for that is that I have weakened this light square diagonal. The bishop comes in with check, and now my opponent has 3 pieces attacking my king. So they've got some real mate-in-one threats. I am in some serious, serious trouble. Now I'm forced here to make a move. Opponent finds the best move because that potentially is a mate in potential sort of there's a potential mate in one. No, not mate in one. There's potential mating threats. That's right, around here. I decide here that I need to do something, so I give a check. Oh, very happy to see that they pulled their bishop back. So at least there's only 2 attackers against my king. I move my queen out of the way. They give a check. Okay, block with bishop. They check again, block. And I was thinking, okay, if we're going to get a draw by repetition, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm happy with that. They decided not to do that and decided to here attack my knight. And I thought, okay, I think I now potentially have an opportunity. So this diagonal is open. Let's give a check. I thought that the opponent probably won't take my knight with their rook, even though I thought that's probably their best move. And I was right. They move their king instead, which of course now blocks that diagonal. This bishop wasn't really contributing anything, it wasn't developed. And of course, these rooks aren't connected. So this was a good move. Check. They took. Take back with queen. Check. Okay, so managed to liquidate their knight. So their knight now is no longer hassling my king. They've only got 1 attacking piece against my king, which means there's no mate-in-one threats anymore. This rook is also now defended. It's been sort of hanging for ages. So I was very happy here. King now moves to the wrong square. I think here they actually wanted to potentially trade queens. I think that might have potentially actually been the best move. But they wanted to attack my knight. That's okay. I take the bishop with check, and my queen now controls these squares. So these 2 pieces can't develop. They probably thought that they could attack my queen by taking, but here the f-file's open. So check, king forced to move, and they moved to the wrong square. So king here was a blunder, a very subtle blunder. Like, why is it even that bad? -7. If the king moved to g2 instead, it would have still been equality. It would have been 0, 0, 0. But now it's -7. I'm way back ahead. And the reason for that is, of course, rook captures rook. Bishop captures rook. Rook to f8, controlling the f-file again. And in this position, with the king on g1 rather than g2, that bishop is pinned and there's a mate threat. This is why this is why that position was so problematic. They now forced to defend the king with their only other developed piece. So I've got potentially 3 attackers, and so they need to use the queen and bishop to defend their king. These 2 pieces here with my queen infiltrated on their back rank can't develop. And so even though they have slightly up on material, I'm in a completely winning position. But it's not easy. It's not simple. I give a check. King here, queen all the way back. Potentially, potentially there's a mating threat again. King comes back. All right, so I don't want to shuffle. I don't want to get a draw by repetition. So first I move my king out of the way so that my bishop is no longer pinned. So I've got mobility of the bishop again. They move the king. I take the pawn on b2, so potentially going to take the rook next. There we go. They give a check. That's fine. King here. That rook, however, now can no longer directly attack the king the next turn. They push pawns. That's fine. I now slide my rook across, and here I saw basically if I move the bishop, I've got a check and it'll be a discovered attack on the queen. If I win the queen, trade my rook for the queen, I'll be completely winning. They, of course, saw that. And this is one of the things with tournament games, you've got a lot of time to observe. So often these sort of tricks don't really work. Bump the knight. Knight has nowhere good to go apart from being on the edge of the board. Okay, so even though it's not locked in, it's not trapped, it's not contributing. I now bring forward my my pawn, just so that the queen can't infiltrate in that position. They move the king again, but you know, trying to bring the king into attack doesn't work with the queen here. So king forced to go back. And my goal here is to try to advance my pieces closer and closer to the white king. These two pieces should be locked in the defense of the king. Their knight can't contribute, and eventually I should be able to force a piece trade. And with 3 pieces versus 2, I should be eventually able to win. So that's the plan. King forced back to the back rank, attack the queen. Queen moves out of the way. I move my queen to the back rank. So again, attacking that piece. Queen, so see, their pieces forced to hug their king to maintain the defense. And here, with another check, bringing my pieces closer and closer. Bring my pieces closer and closer. Here we go, closer and closer. And here, potentially, I saw a check. They move the king, and what I played here was queen to the back rank, and basically that bishop is forced to block, which means I win the queen. And on this position, my opponent opted to resign. Now I actually had a more forcing move after this move. I could have played queen to f2 with check. And in this position, the king is forced to move to this position. And now I've got check, they have to block, check, have to block, check, have to block, check, and mate. So I had a potential mate in 4. What an absolutely stupendous game. Good game, GG. My big takeaway from this game is to enter some tournaments if you've never tried before. Your opponents are often more engaged, and you sometimes end up with some amazing games. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.